Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon,
And I'm Mom.
and welcome back here to Tansson Talks TV. I am so excited to be here with you all today.
I'm excited to be here too.
And so, first of all, Mom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well today. Thank you for asking, Brandon.
Of course. Yeah, and did you know this is our 12th one already?
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, this has been just such a fun journey so far over these, I suppose, 11 and a half weeks, and I'm so excited to continue with this.
Oh, yeah, same here.
So, are you able to let everyone know what is it that we are watching today for our 12th week on the Tanson Talks TV show?
I sure will. We don't have the bin today. Today, we are actually going to talk about the show Seinfeld.
So, are you able to let everyone know as to what we know about the show?
Actually, Brandon, I can honestly say we don't know much. Um, I can say that I have, throughout the years, I may have some bits and pieces of episodes of Seinfeld. I know I have never seen the first episode of Seinfeld. Of course, we're talking about the pilot today. Um, but I do not know much about the show besides who stars in it.
Yeah, I can honestly say the same as well. I've heard a bit about who stars in it, but other than that, I know absolutely nothing. I haven't even seen the bits and pieces that you may have even seen. I don't know anything.
Yeah. So this was fun for, I guess, for both of us because we did get a chance to actually explore a show that we have not seen at all. And I think what's different from some of the other shows is that we stopped at the first episode so that we could actually just give our first thoughts on the first episode only.
Yeah, and I think that is, very interesting to do and be on this side of things instead of, a show that like maybe we have seen through and through because we truly don't know what happens next.
No, we surely don't. And we ended up actually, so your audience to know, we ended up having to watch this one twice because we didn't pick up on all the small little things the first time we watched it.
That is quite true. But if you're able, Mom, to do the honors of giving us our official recap for the first episode of Seinfeld, produced by Castle Rock Entertainment.
I sure will. And so this show is actually set in New York City. And it begins actually with a comedy act with Jerry Seinfeld giving a comedy act to the audience. It's just a maybe 1 or 2 minute scene. And then we go straight to the next scene from there. And it takes place in a cafe. And Jerry is there, and he is introduced in that particular episode. And that's at this time period. Jerry is there along with his friend George. And they are both talking while they're drinking coffee. Um, Jerry talks about Jerry talks about how he met a girl after he completed one of his comedy acts outside of the city. And the girl is coming to town, and he's really excited because he says that she wants to spend time with him. And so the friend is very excited. George is very excited to hear that. And George says, well, what did she say? And so Seinfeld gave the words and how she said it. And George makes the comments that he doesn't really think that she is interested in him. It just so happens that she might visit him possibly while she's in town. But based upon the word choice she's using, um, George does not believe that the girl, her name is Laura, is really interested in Jerry. And and so they kind of talk about a little about semantics and how things are kind of said to each other. And then it kind of goes straight from there to the next scene, in which Jerry said he needed to go to the laundromat. And so at the laundromat, both George and Jerry still continue the conversation about this girl and some of the word choices that she used in regards to seeing him. And George is still not convinced that this girl really wants to see Jerry or spend much time with him anyway. And so, and then they kind of have a bit about, they talk a little bit about laundry. And then from there, we actually go straight from another scene. The scene goes straight there to Jerry having his comedy act. Now, I will say that Jerry was introduced as Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, and so not sure whether or not this is supposed to be reflective of his life or not, but he does introduce himself as that particular person. And so Jerry does a comedy act in regards to the laundromat and where they were, in regards to how things kind of go on in the laundromat, and specifically about socks. Um, and the next thing we know, the next scene cuts to where he's at home, and he's getting ready to watch a baseball game, or a baseball game that he had taped, and he doesn't want to know what has happened because he did tape the show. And so then a gentleman opens the door and kind of lets himself in, and Jerry refers to him as Kessler. And Kessler comes and he kind of ruins the results of the game for Jerry. And then he kind of talks to Jerry a little bit, and then all of a sudden he makes a comment like, "I have two pieces of bread. Do you have meat?" And so Jerry just tells him, "Go ahead and get some, go ahead and in the fridge." In the midst of their speaking, we do find out that not Jerry, but the friend Kessler has not left the house and left the apartment building in roughly about 10 years or so. And then Laura calls, the intended girl, and she's asked Jerry whether or not she could stay with him instead of, she says she can't find a hotel room. And so he says yes, and that he was going to ask George in order to help pick her up. And then we cut to the next scene, which is really at the airport, where George and Jerry are there to pick up Laura. Once more, they talk about semantics and the exact wording that was given for how the girl said she wanted to meet Jerry. And so they talk a little bit about that. And then they go into depends on how the girl greets Jerry at the airport. And so they have a little discussion about how depending on how Laura greets Jerry will depend on what she really feels about Jerry. And well, of course, she greets. Of course, it's not in the way that George and Jerry thought that she would do. She kind of ran behind him and put her hands over Jerry's eyes, and then greeted him in a different way. And so they don't know how to react to that. And then we cut again to the next scene in which Laura is at Jerry's apartment, and they're speaking, and she asks for a glass of wine, or she has to turn down the lights, and then the phone rings, and so Jerry picks up the phone, hands, and it's for Laura. Laura picks up the phone, and Laura speaks to the person, and then says she has general conversation, hands the phone back to Jerry, and then she says she wants to do some touristy things, but at the same time, she says that she just spoke to her fiance. And so that kind of throws Jerry off, and he doesn't quite know what to say. And she says, "Never get engaged." And then the scene kind of ends kind of like that. But then we have another cut scene that goes right after that, in which case Jerry is actually doing another comedy act. So this is like the third comedy act in this particular episode. And he talks about really the whole episode, but without saying it was an episode. He's referring back to women in general, and he talks about signals, which is what they've talked about, signals, and that's what they've gone back and forth throughout this whole episode, in which he says that women give subtle signals, and so he said he's had a hard time trying to read that, but that's in essence how it kind of ends, is the fact that it is a comedy act at the end, and in essence he has kind of wrapped everything up in this last little bit.
Cool. Thank you so much for our synopsis, Mom.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, and this is just so interesting. I mean, having watched this, and like you said earlier, that this is our second go around watching this within this week, and something that maybe it's just an observation, but I feel like we laughed more the second time around than when we watched it the first time.
Yeah, we did discover that we were giggling a little more when we watched it the second time around. I don't know if we just picked up some of the nuances that was there. The first time, I know I was so busy trying to write notes to make sure that I remembered everything, since it was not an episode that I knew, like some of the other episodes that we've talked about.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, I don't know what exactly it was per se. Maybe it's that we, like you said, we were so busy, taking our notes and writing down the names of the characters that maybe the show just requires more concentration to enjoy it. I don't know. This is only our second time watching, but nevertheless, though, I mean, it was somewhat of a fun watch show.
It was a better watch than I thought it would be.
Yeah, and I think the thing that, well, actually, before I say mine, what would you say is the some is what would you say stood out to you the most in watching this?
I think for me, for this particular episode, what stood out the most is kind of how all the characters were introduced. That stood out more for me than anything. I guess because I was so unaware of the show, even though I knew it was on, I knew it was a very popular show. I just didn't pay much attention to the introduction to character. Well, I paid more attention this episode for the introduction of characters than I have in some of the other shows. Um, I like that at the beginning, just so the audience knows, there is a waitress there at the beginning who I didn't realize was actually supposed to be one of the main characters because her name is actually at the beginning of the show as someone is credited, and she does introduce by first and last name. She does introduce Jerry and George to the audience. She says enough that we know that George is that I'm sorry that Jerry is a comedian. We know that George and Jerry are friends just based upon the banter that they have there. Where Kessler, who was introduced much later in the episode, we know now as Kramer. And but I we had to rewind that back a couple of times because I knew there was a Kramer character, but they referred to him as Kessler, and they referred to him by this name a couple of times in the first episode also. And and then Julia Louis Dreyfus, who I was waiting for, of course, never appeared in this episode. Um, so we will have to find out later about Julia to figure out how she was even introduced.
Yeah, because like I said before, I know absolutely nothing about the show. I didn't even know that there was a Kramer character to begin with. You know, whereas you at least knew that part. But but I did at least know that Julie Louis Dreyfus, is said to be in the show, and so I think I had seen or heard something somewhere like a long time ago that she wasn't in the first episode or maybe episodes. I'm not completely sure because obviously we're only speaking about this one, but nevertheless, I would be interested in seeing where she is introduced and how she is introduced.
Yep, that would be interesting to see too. And then, Brand, you made another observation while we were talking in regards to the years that it came out.
Yeah, so in doing the research for this, because I always like to do some research before presenting to you all, was that apparently, although this episode was released in July of 1989, that apparently the next episode wasn't until, I believe, May 31st of 1990. So I'm not sure completely as to what happened, but it seems that maybe they just showed the pilot and maybe they had more reception than they thought and decided to make the series the following summer.
Yeah, yes, and you also made a comment about the amount of episodes that were in the first season.
Yeah, because apparently this one episode, the pilot, was originally going to be called, the Seinfeld. Um, yeah, this original episode was just going to be called the Seinfeld Chronicles, but but after this, the rest of the first season that was made only had four more additional episodes for a total of five episodes in the season. I mean, at least for me and all of the television I looked at, that's mainly unheard of.
Yeah, it is, especially to have such a small amount of episodes, and then, like you said, a year later at that.
And for a summer series, too.
Yes, yes, that's very true too.
But yeah, but especially for the summer series to end up, yeah, becoming a show that we've at least heard of means that it definitely has at least lasted, a while. And so I would be intrigued to see, does the formula of this episode stay like this, or does it change throughout the first episode? Does season two change it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true too, Brandon. All I know is I remember the comedy act. Like I said, I didn't watch it, but I do remember the comedy act. I think he started at the mall with the comedy act. I don't know about the ending though, or whether or not they all ended in a comedy act or not. Since, like I said, I just saw sporadic things.
Yeah, and in terms of what stood out to me the most, and viewing is the comedy act. I at least knew somewhat, that there was one at some point, but I didn't realize how frequent it was being at the beginning, middle, and end. And so I don't know, maybe I just expected it to be maybe at just the beginning, just the end, or both. But the middle one I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that one either. And but then it just fit right in because he talked about what he just did. And I know overall that back, at least when I watched it, they considered it a comedy, a show about nothing. And in which case, it seemed to be a show about nothing. But we'd have to watch future episodes to see how they kind of build on that.
Yeah, and I have heard that terminology as well. But, I think maybe the reason, after thinking a bit, maybe the reason as to why we enjoy it the second time is because, I think most of the shows that we watch have a certain type of comedy that we enjoy and expect. And I know both of us, at least for me anyway, also enjoy physical comedy too. But I would say with the first episode, we didn't know what to expect. And so maybe it's just that we had to get adjusted to it. But with episode 2, because we know what to expect and what we are and are not getting out of it, maybe we were able to adjust our standards a little bit and actually enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe that's so. And the thing is, I did kind of enjoy this episode. I know you always ask me, would I watch this again? Well, I don't know. Well, I would watch it again because I do want to see how Julia Louis-Dreyfus kind of comes in because we've seen other things that she plays in and that we really like. And so I would like to see how she kind of comes into the episode. Whether or not this becomes a regular for me to watch, that I don't know. I don't know what your opinion is about that.
Yeah, likewise. But I would say, like, for me, obviously, being a full time graduate student, among other things, I have a very busy schedule. I watch a lot of TV, but nevertheless, still a very busy schedule. But I would say I would be like you said, I'd be very interested in seeing how she's introduced, and of course, I think it'd actually be a good idea if we were to finish the season 1. I mean, it's only 4 more episodes, and so we haven't lost anything there. But I don't know if I would intentionally tune it on, but I don't think I would be quick to turn it off, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. Yes.
But yeah, but I don't want to, get the notion wrong. I really enjoyed, especially the second time around. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed watching the episode, and I think it like adds a little bit of flavor to our our TV viewing, and I guess diversify our expectations.
It does. It does. We talk about it as the theme songs. And so this one didn't really have a theme song. It has the bop, bop, bop thingy at the end. So for the bop, bop, bop thingy, 1.5. I like words to my theme songs.
But nevertheless, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, though, like in observing the openings, something I was very observant of the second time around was like reading the names. So, like you said, that one waitress Claire was supposed to be, a main character, and among other things. And so I find it interesting that, even obviously with this being a syndicated one, that they still at least left her name in as a main character. Because I know sometimes, yeah, after the fact, after the first episode, you might change it up based off of whatever the future series is. So I'm at least glad to see what is still intact.
Yeah, that is true too.
But yeah, but did you have any other notes as to anything you want to note for this episode, or anything that you even were a little curious about?
No, like I said, we kind of talked about some of the things that I was most curious about, which is, of course, when Julia Louis Dreyfus kind of comes in. I'd be interested to know why they actually changed the name of Kessler to Kramer. I don't know if we'll ever necessarily know that particular fact. Um, and whether or not really just does that cafe play a part in the show? I don't know. Is it just a setup for this first scene? If this particular lady was supposed to be a main character, she was only seen once this time. So, um, so it'll be interesting to see if if things do take place always at this restaurant, or was this just a fluke and this is just in the first episode only?
Yeah, and considering that, from what we read anyway, that she's only a main character in this one, is does she even appear again at all? and perhaps because she's not a regular at this point, like, do they just change locations altogether for their hangout spot? I mean, that's something I would
Yeah,
want to know.
I know it's the laundry room, regular location. And just so the people know, the waitress's name is Claire.
Yes, and yeah, and like a question you mentioned earlier. Actually, I think you mentioned this exact one. Is when I was watching it, I was trying to figure out if the comedy act that you know that's throughout the episode, if that is from Jerry Seinfeld, the character or the actor, or if it's just sort of like an illusion in of itself. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's true too. So that is a good question. And I don't know. You'll have to do research to find out whether or not that's true. If that's written down somewhere, I'm sure that part's written somewhere.
Yeah, and if there's any Seinfeld fans out there that are watching this and have made it this far, let us know in the comments if you think that we should continue watching a little bit because on our own, because I think that I'd love to hear what you all think.
Yep, that would be great. Let us know. And then also let us know if there are any other shows, suggestions for shows that you'd like for us to watch. Please write it down in the comments below.
Yeah, I hope that you all do that because I'm so excited to watch the amazing shows that you all have to suggest.
Yep, same here.
But yeah, unless you have anything, I think we're ready to begin closing out.
No, I think I'm good for today.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. We always appreciate your support, and I'm ready for the next 12. What about you?
I am sure ready for the next 12.
Yeah, well, until next time, have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll see y'all next time.
All right, bye bye.